Hi, welcome to another Lemon Amiga game guide and review. This time we'll be taking a look at the 1989 game Savage, produced by Probe and released by Firebird in the UK, and Microplay, which was a label of Microprose in the US, and it was also released on the budget US Gold label. So let's skip on through the intro and check this game out. And for this we will have to reset the machine, because there's no way to quit the intro. All we have to do is quit back to the title menu and press F2 to load level 1. This game is an adventure action game, and to begin we can choose a number of options. We can first take a look at the credits, and we can also change the music and the sound effects, and we can also have music and sound effects playing together. But for this, let's just select sound effects and check that out. We'll find pretty meaty sound effects there. But for this, I actually prefer the music. So if we press escape, we can quit back to the main menu, and let's select the music. Savage is a horizontal scrolling shoot 'em up for the main part, split into 3 levels. On the first disc we'll find the first level, and here all we need to do is to run all the way to the exit, which is on the far right of the level, taking on all comers in between. Our primary weapon is the axe, and this will arc its way across the screen and take on all these varieties of enemies, and we can pick up extra weaponry later on. You can also see the blue shield wrapping around the player there, and that will destroy things in its vicinity, and as we shall see later on, we can pick up a number of shields. But for now we are approaching our first boss, and all we have to do is to lay into that thing and fire maybe 50 axes into that thing, and then the fat man will hopefully fall over. To help us, you can see on the top of the screen an instrument panel. My health is halfway down, so when I collect the green bottle there, that will restore our health all the way to the top. So the left hand red column is our health, and the right hand column is our lives. We have 3 lives on each of the 3 stages in the game, dependent on a password retrieved at the end of each level, and that should just about enable us to get through these levels in one piece. By shooting the blue alien there, you may notice that drops a chalice, and if we pick that up we will gain the shield. That shield will last roughly 10 seconds. In that time we can run into those enemies and be more or less invulnerable. The hard part is jumping over these gaps. These require pixel perfect jumps, and with these signs getting in the way, it makes life all the harder. And we cannot shoot the enemies while we are jumping because we'll fall and die. All we can do is to pray that we find one of those green dragons, and the green dragon will either drop one of those blue gems there that we can pick up for extra score, or that will drop the green bottle like this, and we can have full energy. Our energy is actually topped up as we go through onto the next section, and this serves as a waypoint. At this stage I'd always recommend having some kind of a green bottle, and in those barrels you'll find green bottles waiting for you. So all you have to do is to use the shield and leave those lying around the level for when you need those. And that is precisely what I am about to do, because there is yet another boss coming up. There are at least 5 bosses on the first level, and these will each take a specific number of hits. So leaving a supply of green bottles hanging around in the background is certainly a great escape policy, because you never know how long each boss is going to take, and sometimes if we don't get the green bottle from flying dragons, we could be there for quite some time. The best tip is to hang around on the corner of the screen and to lob pot shots into that thing, hopefully avoiding most of its firepower. Sometimes you have to take on the enemies which float endlessly in from the right hand side of the screen, and those generic enemies don't take much firepower to kill, but in the meantime, well, let's avoid that storm which is emitting from that dragon, and you can see the energy flashing there, so let's run back and pick up those green bottles. And yes, they will hang around forever. So let's just run all the way back and then collect green bottle, and those spiders there don't really make much difference to the level, but those spiders will appear if the character stays where they are for a number of seconds, so there are no invulnerability spots on this level. And let's just wade in, and that green spike there should give us a massive shield, and the energy bolt there will give us a power upgrade. So now we can fire lightning. That means we can fire at those guys directly, and with that big shield on the go, well, that shield doesn't last forever. Again, we have to perform pixel perfect jumps on the edge of these platforms, and the programmers have given us some encouragement along the way, but as you can see, sometimes that blocks the player. But if we do get far in this game, the game does reward us occasionally with an excellent or a brilliant, and sometimes it is excellent that we have managed to get that far, and sometimes it's just easy. Lobbing lightning bolts into this skeleton certainly made that easy enough, and running back yet again to collect the energy means we have full health running on to the next section. Unfortunately, with enemies crowding the screen and annoying signs falling down from the ceiling every 5 seconds, it becomes difficult to make these pixel perfect jumps every single time, and if you can't, well, you're gonna have to go back and try that again. We are invulnerable for a number of seconds, but again, unless you hit those platforms on the side on the absolute limit of your jumping ability, then you will die. There is no two ways about this game, and those kind of 3D views don't make jumping very easy. This game was released on a number of platforms, including the Atari ST, the Amstrad CPC, the Commodore 64, the PC, and the Clive Sinclair ZX Spectrum. And the Amiga version is probably the best because it has the best music by a long way, and probably the best graphics, although the ZX Spectrum version wasn't bad, and again the ST is more or less an Amiga clone. Back on the Amiga, I am losing another life, which means I am down to my last life to complete this level, having had my ass kicked by this red dragon. Finally, we have managed to remove that thing, and for our time and trouble, we now have 2 shields and the return of our axes, which means we can run health for leather through these things at high speed, and again, we can leave those energy bottles behind should we choose to do so, and well, we don't need to do so on this section because we have found the elevator to the upper level. Along here to the right is the final exit to the level, and all we have to do is to jump over all these things to get to the end of the level and to get that password, which will give us 3 lives on level 2. But it is not easy, and look at that, no hope. The programmers have even included signs which will absolutely tell us that there is no point jumping because we are not going to make it. So let's avoid these enemies, trying to find another energy bottle again so that we can make it. And if we don't make it, then there is no point collecting that energy because even a full energy top up will not make us survive. And there it is, let's collect that and run and see if we can make it right on the edge, and no! Savage. And so we have 0 lives remaining, right on the edge, and no! We don't make it. Which means, yet again, it's game over. And if we want, we can now reset the machine and try level 2. In this section, we must ride on the back of a hawk through a virtual 3D section, avoiding all these columns and blasting all the skulls which lie in our way. Unfortunately, one touch of those columns means game over because we have not entered the password because we did not complete level 1. The game will give us 1 life to play on this level, but as you can see, if you collide into one of those things with 1 life, it means the game is impossible. And this is me fruitlessly trying to play the game over and over and over again, and perhaps a pattern can be memorized through this field of instant death, but to my mind it is particularly hard, and even Space Harrier was easier than this, and I'd certainly recommend Unreal, but I would not recommend that section of the game. The good news is the music isn't so bad at all. In fact, the music in this entire presentation is probably the best thing about the entire game. Music does not make a great game, so unfortunately that's as much as I can stand on that level. So let's reload yet again and check out those passwords so that we can enter those on the third and the last level of this game. On the surface, the password system does make this game pretty easy to navigate, and we can play these levels even without the passwords. But with the password it does give us 3 lives, and those 3 lives are certainly crucial on each of the levels of Savage. So let's select the music again and let's set off. In this third level we play as an eagle or a hawk perhaps, and we can fly and fire laser bolts on all these enemies, and they will fire laser bolts back. So all we can do is to avoid the landscape, and touching that water is an instant death. We will also find spikes which are instant death, and all these enemies will deplete our energy. You can see the energy bar there is virtually in the top center of the screen, and those dots will deplete the more we continue along the level and take these hits. Those devils there really do take some firepower to knock out, and look at these chains there. We have to avoid the dropping boulder and make that timing perfect, otherwise you're gonna die. And very nice to see blood there coming out of that eagle, and well, dying in this section is particularly easy, and we can collect those things there. The aim of this final level is to collect 4 objects, of which that is number 1, and periodically the game will give us cauldrons, and touching those cauldrons will top up our energy level, which is certainly needed. In fact, if we loiter around those cauldron areas, that will make us virtually invulnerable, and so if we stray too far like this and make a meal of all these enemies, we can simply return to the cauldron and get our energy topped all the way back up. You can see those lethal spikes there will appear on the screen at the very last moment, so if the player doesn't know about those, they will collide head on into those, and so it really does help to memorize these levels. And sometimes the aliens there, you can directly stream into those at high speed. But collecting the second of our objects is the hardest object of them all. Not because of this boss, which we have to knock out, because the boss is relatively easy. Again, if we loiter on the corner of the screen, we can avoid most of its bullets and its firepower. And well, if it does fire bullets or firepower, which I haven't actually noticed. But the hardest part about collecting this second item is this random spike that will move across the screen at absolute random. Sometimes it may give the player mere seconds to make the gap, sometimes it gives just the 1 second and you'll end up flying in there anyway. I've been known to wait for many seconds for that thing to move, and then when it does move it just heads straight back. So that's the second of our 3 lives wasted already. We are on our last life and we've collected 2 items. Luckily that's more or less the hardest section of this level, and once we are past this, well, more random spikes to go, but once we are past these, then it really does even out towards the finish. The graphics in Savage are okay. They are certainly well drawn, but they are not amazing compared to some Amiga classics, and Stormlord and Deliverance perhaps were certainly better platformers than this, better well defined and better drawn. So the graphics may look chunky there and a little 8-bit, but at least the starfield in the background remains constant, and that adds just a little something to the gameplay element. As far as the longevity goes, well, the gameplay isn't amazing. The first level is basically inching forward and killing everything that moves, and risking every life on those incredibly difficult jumps. The second level is more or less a memory maze, and if you can make those columns then great, if you can't it's game over. And the third level is more or less a maze, and as we enter the maze section here you can find extra lethal spikes there waiting to get rid of us, but the third level, once memorized, shouldn't be too much of a problem. So longevity is spoilt in this game because the playability is limited in certain sections, and perhaps the first and the third section is, well, they are at least playable, and yet the second section certainly isn't. The sound effects are really tremendous, and they are quite meaty as well. They are loud and they make a huge impact. And the music, well, the music is, to my ears, really well defined, and each one of the 3 levels in this game are defined by really funky music. But again, there are too many deficiencies in this game to make it playable. The maze at the end of this level is, well, it's difficult to memorize, and if we miss one of those tokens by mistake, it's a long way back to one of those cauldrons. So sometimes mazes aren't my favourite thing, and certainly this maze isn't particularly interesting when all these columns and avenues look exactly the same. I do remember having most fun on level 1, and I sometimes play level 1 just to give that a quick bash and a quick complete, and even with my levels of skill ability I sometimes complete level 1 and sometimes I don't, again depending on those ridiculous jumps. So sometimes level 1 can be fun, but again, wandering around this maze waiting to collect the last of the 4 items isn't interesting, and so the game is counterbalanced by boring sections where no enemies spawn, or at least very few, and progress is certainly easy. Even the programmers went on to bigger and better things. The main coder, Tim Moore, began with Beyond the Ice Palace for Elite in 1988 on the Amiga. The co-coder, Chris Long, he moved on to Curse of Enchantica and even Chuck Rock. And the graphics, Nick Brutti went on to create Supremacy, the graphics for Supremacy in 1990, and Alan Tompkins, he went on to Mr. Heli and Megalomania. So the music was created by Kevin Collier, and he again went on to Mr. Heli and Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1994, which was a tremendously deep game on the Amiga. So all those guys, Chuck Rock there in 1991 and Megalomania, all those guys went on to great games. It's a pity that this game feels a little rushed, and the demo introduction can't be skipped, and well, little bugs in the game make the game very unplayable indeed. So a mixed bag there. And so we get to the scores. Your Amiga gave the Amiga version 89%, the Amiga gave it 79%, Amiga Computing gave it 76%, Zap gave this game 71%, Amiga User International gave the Amiga version 50%, and Dator magazine, the Swedish magazine, gave this 3 out of 10, that's 30%, claiming that none of the 3 levels were fun or even a little fun, and the reviewer was actually bored to death. I can certainly see where they came from, and a certain gloss and shine to this game certainly doesn't cover up the weaknesses under the surface. Thank you for viewing this play guide and review, and I'll be bringing you another lesser known game sometime soon. Thank you.